Picture this. You're driving home after a long day. No speeding, no phone in your hand, seatbelt clicked in, radio low. You think you've done everything right. Then 3 weeks later, a letter shows up on your doormat with a fine attached. Sound unfair? It's happening to thousands of drivers across the UK right now. And in 2026, it's only getting easier for it to happen to you too. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because I'm going to walk you through 7 driving mistakes that are quietly costing British drivers money this year. And the last one is the one almost nobody sees coming until it's too late. Let's start with the one everybody thinks they understand, but most people get wrong. And that's speeding by what feels like barely anything. For years, drivers relied on a bit of wiggle room, a few miles an hour over the limit that traffic officers would usually let slide. That cushion is shrinking fast. Average speed cameras are now stretched across far more motorways and major roads than before. And unlike the old single-point cameras, you can't slow down for one camera and speed back up afterward. These systems track your average speed across a whole stretch of road, so there's nowhere to hide. On top of that, speed awareness courses, the ones that let first-time minor offenders avoid points on their license, are becoming harder to qualify for. The threshold is dropped, which means more drivers are walking away with points instead of a classroom session. So if you've been treating the speed limit as a suggestion with a few miles per hour of breathing room, that habit is exactly the kind of thing that's catching people out in 2026. Mistake number 2, and this one is brutally simple, is touching your phone while you're driving, even for a second. Maybe you're stopped at a red light and you glance down to skip a song. Maybe your phone buzzes on the passenger seat and you pick it up out of habit. New AI-powered cameras are specifically designed to catch exactly this kind of behavior, scanning for handheld phone use alongside other offenses like not wearing a seatbelt. These cameras don't need a police officer standing on the roadside anymore. They work around the clock, and they're popping up in places drivers don't expect. The old excuse of "I was only stopped at traffic lights" doesn't hold up, because the camera doesn't care whether your car is moving or not. If your phone is in your hand while you're behind the wheel, you're exposed. Number 3 is one that used to feel almost harmless, and that's skipping your seatbelt or letting a passenger ride without theirs. For a long time, a seatbelt offense just meant a fine and nothing else touched your license. That's changing. Drivers caught without a seatbelt are now facing penalty points on top of the fine, with the fine itself climbing as high as £500 if the case goes to court. And here's the part a lot of people miss. You're legally responsible for making sure children in your car are properly buckled in, which means it's not just your own seatbelt that can land you in trouble. If you've got a habit of starting the engine before you click in or letting kids ride loose for a quick trip down the road, this is the year that habit gets expensive. Mistake number 4 is the quiet one, and it's letting your tax, your MOT, or your insurance lapse without realizing it. Enforcement around this has gone almost entirely automatic. Number plate recognition cameras are scanning vehicles constantly, cross-checking them against live records for tax, MOT, and insurance status. There's also a new digital compliance code being rolled out that links directly to your vehicle's records, and if you fail to keep things updated, fixed penalties start at around £200, with the potential for far steeper consequences if you're caught driving without valid insurance altogether. Driving uninsured can mean fines starting at £300 and stretching all the way to an unlimited amount through the courts, plus 6 to 8 penalty points, and in some cases, your car can be seized right there on the roadside. The dangerous part is that this isn't something you necessarily notice in the moment. Your MOT can lapse, your insurance can expire, and you can be driving around for days without realizing you're now breaking the law every time you start the engine. Number 5 might be the most overlooked mistake on this entire list, and that's having number plates that aren't fully legal. We're talking about spacing that's slightly off, fonts that don't meet the legal standard, or tinted plates that make them harder to read. It sounds minor, almost cosmetic, but AI cameras are specifically scanning for illegal plates now as part of the wider enforcement push. If your plate doesn't read clearly, or if it's been styled in a way that breaks the rules, you can be fined for something that has nothing to do with how you actually drove that day. A lot of drivers buy plates without ever checking whether they're road legal, and that small oversight is exactly the kind of thing flying under the radar until a fine turns up. Mistake number 6 is one that touches a part of driving culture that's been around forever. And that's the idea of having just one before you get behind the wheel. Drink driving limits have been tightened, and the lower threshold means it takes far less alcohol than people assume to push you over the legal limit. Police now have expanded powers to carry out roadside testing more frequently, and for drug driving specifically, saliva-based tests are being used as evidence without always needing a follow-up blood test, which speeds up enforcement significantly. Some convicted offenders are even being required to install devices that physically prevent their car from starting if alcohol is detected. The penalties themselves haven't softened either. We're talking about potential imprisonment, unlimited fines, and a mandatory driving ban of at least 12 months, with repeat offenders facing bans of 3 years or more. The "I'll be fine, it was just one drink with dinner" mindset is exactly the gap this year's tougher enforcement is designed to close. And finally, mistake number 7, the one that catches out drivers who think they're being careful. This is about driving an unfamiliar vehicle the way you drive your own car and not adjusting for changes like the congestion charge. Think about someone who hires a van for a weekend move and drives it on a dual carriageway at the same speed they'd normally drive their own car. The problem is vans often have different lower legal speed limits than standard cars, and if that van gets caught by a camera, the fine and the points get passed straight back to the driver, not the hire company. On top of that, if you're driving into central London, the congestion charge has gone up, and the old discounts for electric vehicles have been reduced significantly, which means drivers who haven't checked the new rates are getting hit with charges and penalties they didn't budget for. The lesson here is that familiarity with your own car doesn't automatically transfer to every vehicle you get behind the wheel of, and assuming the same rules apply everywhere is a mistake that's tripping up more drivers than you'd think. So there you have it, 7 mistakes that are genuinely catching UK drivers out in 2026, and honestly, most of them aren't about reckless driving at all. They're about small habits, quiet oversights, and assumptions that used to be harmless but aren't anymore. The common thread running through almost every single one of these is enforcement. Cameras are smarter, checks are more automatic, and the margin for error that drivers used to rely on has shrunk dramatically. The good news is that every single mistake on this list is completely avoidable once you know it exists. Double check your tax, your MOT, and your insurance today rather than assuming they're still valid. Get your number plate checked if you've ever wondered whether it's fully compliant. Buckle up before you turn the key every single time, no exceptions. And if you take nothing else away from this video, let it be this. The rules haven't necessarily changed overnight, but how closely they're being watched absolutely has. If this video helped you avoid a fine you didn't even know was coming, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button because I'm covering more of these driving updates as they happen throughout the year, and you don't want to miss the next one. Subscribe to my channel, drop a comment letting me know which one of these 7 surprised you the most, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there and drive smart.